Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Jason Hagholm Sports Experience. I am joined today by Jared Clinton from the Hockey News, as we are about to indulge in a very interesting time in the world of the NHL. And Jared, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, thank you.
Well, hopefully you're not as snowed out and freezing as it's been up here in Ontario, Canada.
Well, I think we got the cold side of it. I believe it's like minus 37 or something here with the wind chill today, so it's pretty frigid.
Yeah, well, it's been a very rough winter ever since 2015 started. So, anyways, Jared, getting to the hockey side of things here, it's been exactly 1 week since the Winnipeg Jets and the Buffalo Sabres made that big trade involving Evander Kane. You are from Winnipeg, so how has the city reacted to the trade, and do you see any more big deals going down before the deadline?
Well, to answer your first question, the city's reacted. I mean, it's tough to gauge the reaction in this city sometimes to something as big as the Evander Kane trade, because there's people who are always going to be on both sides, and I think that's one of the things that is unique to Winnipeg. It's a pretty contrarian city sometimes, but I think for the most part, I would say the reaction is pretty positive. A lot of people probably didn't think the Jets would get quite the return they got for Kane. I mean, of course, you package Bogosian in there too, and you're going to get other things coming the other way. But if you break down the trade the way most people have, Bogosian for Myers, and then Kane for the package that included Stafford, Lemieux, and the first-round draft pick, those are two pretty good hockey deals for a guy in Kevin Cheveldayoff who hasn't made a lot of hockey deals, and that's something that's really going to, has pleased Winnipeg Jets fans and the city as a whole. As for trades coming up for the Jets, I would say you could probably look for them, especially now with the loss of Mathieu Perreault, to try and make a trade somewhere down the line here. If Perreault's gone for the rest of the year, which reportedly he will be, that's a serious loss for the Jets. One that, in my opinion, could be something that actually hurts them in this chase they're in right now for a wild card spot. I know they're in a spot right now, but you've got San Jose 4 points back of you, and then you've got LA 6 points back of Winnipeg. So it's going to be interesting in Winnipeg in the next couple of weeks.
Now, sticking with Perreault, as I was going to ask you that, now with him going down, I mean, he's been a big player for the Jets this season, around 20 goals this season for them. Even if they don't make a move and have Perreault gone for the rest of the season, do you think this team has enough intestinal fortitude, as they say, to make the playoffs?
I think they do. I think the loss of Perreault is going to hurt. From an analytical standpoint, the loss of Perreault is pretty much the worst thing the Jets could have had happen to them right now. But they've banked enough points to this point in the season. And one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about is how many regulation and overtime wins they have compared to other teams like, say, Los Angeles and Minnesota. They're actually trailing in that category. And losing a guy like Perreault, who would probably get you who's probably worth a couple regulation wins, that might hurt. But I think the team as a whole has all the pieces necessary to, I won't say get over the hump, but finish what they started and make it into the playoffs.
I'm really rooting for Winnipeg. They are the first team to have a wild card spot, as you mentioned, and I just think that I agree with you here, Jared. I think they have enough of the fortitude. While the team has found ways to overcome injury all year, and I think a lot of credit should be taken towards Paul Maurice. He's done a fantastic job with the Winnipeg Jets.
And that's one of the things, before the season even began, I was writing something for a small newspaper in Winnipeg, and I wrote about how it's going to be interesting to see what Maurice does with this group, because historically he's had kind of about a 500 record, and to see him take this group and turn them from kind of a group of misfit toys into a serious contender, a team that, I mean, for what it's worth, has beat Chicago 3 of the 4 games they've played them. It's pretty impressive what he's done, and the turnaround in Winnipeg, trust me, has not gone unnoticed.
Now, just the last point here on Winnipeg, there was a report out today, I believe it came from ESPN, stating that the cities like Edmonton, Winnipeg, Buffalo, and Toronto were the least likely places players wanted to go to. Do you think that kind of report hurts a city like Winnipeg, which is a small market team as it is, but they are a winning franchise right now?
I think a lot of people need to realize too, at least for Winnipeg, they're a team that uses an internal cap as well. So they're not really going to go after the big ticket free agent. So it won't hurt them in that sense. And the way that they've built their roster to this point is they're trying to draft and build that way instead of trade for players. I know the big deal with Evander Kane just happened, but that's more of a case. That's a case where they needed to get rid of a player because the situation just wasn't working out. I don't think that's a move that necessarily reflects on anything other than the fact that it wasn't working out for Evander Kane in that locker room, and obviously there was some tension there. I think the team builds that way, so it won't hurt Winnipeg as a small market team, just because Winnipeg has that internal cap. They know how they want to build, they know what they want to build, and they're going about it the right way. Cheap deals, young players, keep it that way, and you never know what can happen.
Now, Jared, the trade deadline is around the corner, about a week away or so. Which teams do you see being the big buyers come trade deadline on March the 2nd?
I mean, the obvious answer would have been the Nashville Predators, but I guess they're done doing most of their buying, right? I think going forward, you're going to have to look at teams like Anaheim. Anaheim's going to be a big one. With the loss of Matt Bolesky and Sami Vatanen, they need to make sure they're not in too much. They're not in a big risk of losing their playoff spot, but you need to make sure they have favorable seeding. You could also look at a team. I mean, it depends what a lot of teams choose to do. Washington, to me, is an interesting case. Washington could potentially go out and look for some more pieces to add to the group they have, because the Eastern Conference, like Elliot Friedman wrote the other day, it's wide open. I think for the most part, personally, my personal belief is there won't be too much action on trade deadline day. I kind of feel like it's going to be another stagnant year where not too much happens. But I would look for most of the buyers to be in the Eastern Conference. I think all your top teams, Montreal, Tampa Bay, New York, both of the New York teams actually, will be the teams that look to add pieces, whereas most of the Western Conference teams, especially in the Central Division, Nashville, like I said, has already done most of their shopping. St. Louis and Chicago both are kind of tight to the salary cap, and I don't really see St. Louis making another big deal this season after their big deal for Ryan Miller and Steve Ott last year fell flat on its face in the first round.
I think it will be interesting, and the thing we've found really since the salary cap's been introduced in the NHL, there's been a lot of sizzle but no steak for trade deadlines. I mean, last year you had that Callahan-Stamkos trade, but that was really about it in terms of super excitement I can really remember. Is there any team that you think could be a big seller other than, I guess, Toronto?
I think Carolina is interesting to me. Carolina has a lot of options for players they could move. Whether or not they do move them is a different story, but I think Andrei Sekera is an interesting one. I think that Jeff Skinner also poses kind of an interesting option. He's young. He's obviously talented, but is he ever going to reach what he did in his rookie season again? Who knows? And I think you can trade a player like that who may not be exactly what you wanted him to be at this point in his career, and trade on his potential, kind of like the Sabres did with Tyler Myers. Trade on that potential and try and land something that's going to help you build for the future. And you can never be sure what a team's going to get when they go out and make a trade. Like a Jeff Skinner, for example, could net you 2 second-round draft picks, and that's not going to do you a whole lot of good if you end up blowing those picks on prospects that never pan out. So there's a certain risk in trading a player, a known entity, for something that could be anything. It's like trading. I explained it this way to a friend of mine one time. When you go and you trade a player for draft picks, you're trading $500 for a mystery box. That mystery box could have $500. It could have nothing. So it's boom or bust with the draft pick, and I think a lot of the teams that are going to be sellers have to be wary of what they do.
Well, one team that we obviously know in their past has traded for plenty of mystery boxes that turned out to just be, well, a box, has been the Maple Leafs. They made a big trade over the weekend, trading Cody Franzen and Sandarelli to Nashville, as we've already kind of discussed. And the player they acquired was Ollie Jokinen. He made his debut last night for the Maple Leafs, and I thought he looked pretty good in the game. But to me, the most telling thing from him is his comments after the game about there being tons of negative energy in the Leaf locker room. I felt those to be huge comments for a guy that's played on a lot of terrible teams. What did you take away from the comments, Jared? And if you saw his performance, what did you think of Ollie Jokinen's debut in the Leafs, with the Leafs, as he's just trying to get traded as well?
Yeah. I thought his debut, more than anything, my personal opinion on the debut, which it was a fine game. There was nothing that stood out. There's nothing really notable. And it's not notable in a bad way, not notable in a good way. It was just an average game from a hockey player who's starting to get to the point of his career where he is simply average or possibly less than. I think when it comes to his comments, it's difficult. I spent some time in Toronto. I lived there for 4 years, and I know exactly what the market can be like. And I know how some players probably react to that. I remember having a conversation with Grant Fear one time, and Fear said to me that there's certain players who, when they come to a market like Toronto, will have a very tough time adjusting to the scrutiny that they face. And sometimes that scrutiny is not fair. The blowback on Phil Kessel, for example, this season, that's ridiculous sometimes what he gets, but it's part of playing in that market. And I think more what Ollie Jokinen was trying to say, if I can read into it, is not that the team itself is negative, but I think he feels like there's a lot of negative energy just surrounding the team, and that kind of bleeds into the dressing room. I imagine the players have a tough time dealing with that sometimes, dealing with the fact that there is so much scrutiny and that they are sometimes over-criticized and over-analyzed.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from there, Jared, I thought they played a fine game last night, actually. I mean, that third period, they were just absolutely dominating Florida. They outshot them 16-1. I mean, it really just was that the Panthers have a strong goaltender in Roberto Luongo, but I mean, we haven't seen a Maple Leaf team this bad in forever. It seems like, do you think they're doing the tanking for McDavid, or has the stress of the market for some of these guys just got too much? Like, what do you see as the fix, other than like they have to blow up the team or just totally actually make an effort to change the culture in the dressing room?
I think sometimes culture is a little bit too stressed. I mean, it's important, but I think as a whole, any NHL dressing room probably has roughly the same culture. They're all a bunch of guys, usually in their mid to late 20s. Playing professional hockey for a living. I don't know any situation in which that culture could really be too tainted. I think what the Leafs need to do is blow it up. As soon as they start winning, we won't have these conversations about culture anymore. And I think the biggest thing for them is going through and really analyzing which players they think they can win with, and cutting the fat and getting rid of the ones that they can't.
Well, I mean, everyone is expecting them to do that come trade deadline. We'll see. I know there's been rumors of offers of Kessel going to the Panthers, and heard maybe some interest from the Kings on Phaneuf. So we shall see. Those contracts, though, seem very rough for some teams to try to take them on. Right, and that's one of the things when you were bringing up the salary cap era of the trade deadline. It makes it so difficult now. It's nearly impossible, really, to make a one-for-one trade because you have to have the money work out right. And on top of having the money work out right, you have to make sure that, you're within your roster limit. And there's a whole bunch of things, there are a whole subset of things that go along with trading players. No longer is it, hey, we like this guy, why don't we trade you these two guys for him? That may be good and well, but if the money doesn't work out, that deal falls flat on its face before it even starts. Exactly. I mean, the NHL had to realize that the money was a serious issue. It's not PlayStation anymore. You can just wheel and deal anyone at whim just to build your roster. So, I'm excited to see what's going to happen, because the NHL trade deadline is one of the more interesting ones, but there's always more hype than what comes out of it, so we shall see. Moving on to another team in the East, the Capitals. We have kind of touched on them, but Alexander Ovechkin looks to be in form we haven't seen from him probably since he came into the league. He's leading the NHL in goals right now. What would you say has been the biggest change for him this season?
I honestly think Barry Trotz has had a big impact on his game. I know a lot of people have written about it, and we got to see a little bit of it with the Road to the Winter Classic series. But I think the influence of Barry Trotz and them and Trotz, taking some real quality time and spending it with Ovechkin and showing him, these are the things I want you to be doing. And he made a point in the Road to the Winter Classic series of talking about how he wants Ovechkin to be Ovechkin. He just wants him to play his game, and he wants him to know that that's all he wants of him, is to play his game. Sure, there's added responsibilities now, but there's also a roster of players around Ovechkin now that can support him in that role, and I think Barry Trotz is the perfect guy to utilize those depth players, because that's how he made his career in Nashville, was taking depth players and turning them into a good hockey team. There's not a lot of, outside of Backstrom, Ovechkin, maybe Johansson, Matt Niskanen, you don't have a lot of guys who are first-line talent, and that's kind of Barry Trotz's specialty. And when all the focus isn't just on Ovechkin, and instead on, the second line that Trotz has thrown together is actually ragging the puck and tiring out the other team's, first line once Washington gets possession in the offensive zone, then, 5 minutes later, Ovechkin comes on the ice against a tired group, and there you have it, another goal. So I think the biggest change in Ovechkin's game is just the structure of Washington's game as a whole.
Do you think Barry Trotz will get nominated for Coach of the Year? Because to me, I would put him in there with Peter Laviolette as well as Paul Maurice, who we talked about earlier on.
I think it'll be interesting to see who gets those nods, but I think you're going to have Jack Capulano beat out Trotz, which seems like a real shame to me. But the Islanders leading the Metropolitan Division right now, one of the best teams in the NHL. It's pretty hard to really vote against Capulano. That said, I can't say enough good things about Barry Trotz as a coach. For my money, he's maybe one of the top 5 coaches, if not higher than that, in the entire league.
I totally agree. He kept that job in Nashville since the dawn of time, only to lose because I think the Predators needed that culture change, as we've kind of talked about, and it's really worked out for both guys. And speaking of Nashville right now, I watched some of their game last night against San Jose, and they just scare me because the Sharks, I felt, were dictating a lot of that game. But the play of Pekka Rinne, as well as Mike Ribeiro being a great playmaker, and the likes of James Neal and Shea Weber, is Nashville poised to make a serious run at the Stanley Cup, I guess, come playoff time, Jared?
That's something I keep thinking about, actually. I keep wondering... In my mind, Nashville Predators Stanley Cup champions just seems like a very strange sentence.
Oh, totally.
But it seems like something that could happen this season. I feel like a lot of it's going to come down to whether or not they get one unlucky bounce or one lucky bounce. You can't say enough good things about the way Pekka Rinne has been playing this year. And as bad as it was for him to go down with an injury for two and a half weeks, I think it was, it seems like that was maybe the best thing that could have happened, because Nashville went 500 over that period, and Rinne got a little bit of rest while he was rehabbing from his injury. So you're going to be looking at a more well-rested Rinne than we've seen in a really long time, heading into the playoffs, and they're going to draw one of the wild card teams. So, right there they have an advantage. And if the playoffs started today, they'd play the Winnipeg Jets, I believe. So that's not the worst draw you could have. And I honestly think we're looking at a Nashville team that's going to win a couple of rounds.
Well, for me with Nashville is when Rene went down, that for a team like Nashville, this team that really shouldn't be doing as well as they have been doing this season, Carter Hutton stepped up and played amazing goaltending between the pipes, and that's one thing that scares me when you have solid guys in the backup and depth on your roster. I mean, that's when I think they could make a real run towards a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, and I think the depth on the roster is more important because it's pretty unlikely we'll see Hutton in the playoffs, barring an injury to Rene. I honestly can't even imagine a situation in which Hutton sees any time unless Rene gets blown out of the water, but that hasn't happened at all this year, so I don't see it happening now. But like you said, the depth on the Nashville roster right now is pretty remarkable. Like, you just look at even the season Philip Forsberg's having, and that's a guy nobody expected this season out of. It's a guy that they're getting unexpected offense out of, and that's the kind of thing you need in the playoffs, right? We look at playoff heroes in the last couple of years. Justin Williams for sure pops into mind basically because he's garnered the nickname Mr. Game 7 now. But there's also been Brian Bickle in past years. You've got David Krejci make his name on a playoff run. Billy Lano a couple of years ago. Those are the kind of scorers you need to win in the playoffs, and Nashville has all of them now.
Nashville does as well. I think one of the other teams is the Islanders as well, who they've got Yaroslav Halak from 2010 in there right now, so they have, I think, some potential as well to make a run at it. And wouldn't that be a weird final, Nashville versus the Islanders?
Yeah, I can't imagine that's one that will please the Board of Governors as far as revenue goes. But I think as hockey fans, we always have to hope for the two best teams at the end of it. And I really think one of the best scenarios we could have, just from a purely hockey standpoint, would be Preds Islanders. I mean, aside from that, I would love to see even Preds Tampa Bay would be great. I think those are the two teams out of the East we're probably going to see, is either the Islanders or the Lightning.
Now, Jared, moving on, the NHL seems to be feeling good about themselves as they've got a lot of extra revenue, and they held that ticket drive in Las Vegas, and it's gone pretty well. I think they've hit half their ticket revenue potential for 10,000 tickets. They're at the halfway mark. Do you see a team being in Las Vegas? And if not Las Vegas, do you see a team being in another city like Seattle or the rumored Quebec in the near future?
How near future are we talking here?
5 years or so.
In the next 5 years, I think we'll see at least one more new team. I think the NHL structured everything that way. I mean, you look at the divisions, or the conferences rather, and the West is still missing two teams, so that tells you, the East is still missing, the West is missing two teams. We're getting confused here. But the West is missing two teams, so they're obviously structuring it in a way that they want to even things out. And putting a team in Las Vegas is half that battle, and Seattle would be the other one. You've got groups in both cities that obviously are interested in bringing the game there. And I think you've got to look at Las Vegas, and you have to wonder, they were at 5,000 season ticket sales within 2 days. But you have to wonder if that's not going to start slowing down now. You're going to get most of the people who are very interested out of the way really early. And now you're going to have to start really fighting and battling to get whatever the remainder is, whatever they are at now. And I don't think we've seen an update since the 5,000. So I don't know if I see Las Vegas as a viable market as much as it is intriguing to me. And I think it'd be interesting to see a team there. I just don't think the want is there yet. And I think the thing that would have made the team or the ticket drive so successful is if there was something there prior. But you're doing this ticket drive without any real professional sports and professional hockey, for that matter, knowledge or fan base. Winnipeg, for instance, I know here the season ticket drive was 13,000 tickets. That was sold out within, an hour?
Like 3 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you would not be hoping for, but expecting from a team or from a city rather, that's so passionate about hockey. But I think if we would have seen these ticket drives in previous years, if this was a prerequisite, back when the NHL was expanding in the 90s, we wouldn't have teams we wouldn't have had a team in Phoenix, I can tell you that much. We probably wouldn't have seen teams in Florida. So I think this is more a test and a kind of a measuring stick that the NHL started to put in the way of cities that want to get teams. And I think we're seeing one in Las Vegas that might be unsuccessful.
I totally agree with you, Jared. I was reading in one of the Vegas papers about that, and that was their point, how Winnipeg, when they were announced the team was coming, they sold out their ticket goal within 3 minutes. Vegas has had to hit a standstill. And my issue is pro sports in Las Vegas just doesn't seem like it works there. Vegas is a city that likes to gamble on sports and go see Cirque du Soleil and more so spend time in the casinos, but we've never really seen a stable sports franchise in Vegas, so I feel the NHL's kind of putting the cart before the horse with Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's also worrisome to me that their ECHL team, the Las Vegas Wranglers, they suspended operations for this season, and next season, albeit next season they probably would have been one of the teams that moved east, but the team is just no more. And that's without an NHL team in the city. So I think that's kind of telling about the support that hockey has, because it's apples and oranges comparing Winnipeg to Las Vegas, because Winnipeg is a Canadian city, a very dedicated and passionate hockey city that's had NHL hockey. But even when the AHL was here, the Manitoba Moose were consistently in the top 10 for attendance, if not top 5. And I can remember the entire MTS Center, so that's 15,000 people. I remember the building was packed for a Calder Cup final game. And Las Vegas, their average attendance was somewhere around 3,000 people, and the average attendance at a Manitoba Moose AHL game was 7,000. There's just factors that are kind of against a Las Vegas team making really any sense.
For me, I think if they wanted to expand into a Western United States area, I think Seattle is the best. I know they're building an arena there and hoping of getting not only an NHL team, but an NBA team back. So that building will have double duty standards. I'm surprised they're not focusing more so on Seattle, as Seattle has been a very proven, passionate sports market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Seattle's interesting. Seattle is a very interesting city. The one concern I do have about Seattle is it seems, and from what I've read, and there's a lot of reports coming all the time, and some of it may or may not be factual, but it seems that Seattle and the powers that be in Seattle want the NBA team there as a prerequisite for bringing the NHL team there. So they want to have surefire ticket sales. They know the Supersonics will do well for sure, or whatever they call the NBA team, although it's likely to be the Supersonics. They'll do well. But will an NHL team do well? The Thunderbirds have done just fine in WHL, but bringing an NHL team in is an entirely different beast. You could put an NHL team in several OHL markets, and it would do just fine. But just fine is probably about where you'd say. There just isn't the population in some of those OHL cities. So in Seattle, you have the population, but do you have enough passionate fans to sell that building consistently? Probably. Will they get an NBA team before they get an NHL team? Maybe not. And I think that's kind of the roadblock in front of putting an NHL team in Seattle right now.
Well, I guess we should still wait and see. I do think NHL right now, because of the revenue from more so this Rogers deal and their U.S. contracts, they've been making money hand over fist, and like you said, you'll probably see an expansion team there, but it's still a wait and see thing. Jared, we had some sad news this past week, though, the passing of Steve Montador. He played in, something like 537 NHL games. What are your memories of Steve Montador as a player, and do you think the NHL's kind of getting into the CTE issue with players having depression from concussions like the NFL is going through right now?
Well, Steve Montador as a player, to me, I think the only thing you can really think about is Calgary, his days in Calgary. He just kind of stood out as one of the players on a Calgary team that was
really fun to watch, and it seems strange to, I mean, because now Calgary's fun to watch, but there was an era before this, before Calgary was bad, that Calgary was just a blast, and everybody enjoyed watching them. And that cup run, he was a part of that, and not a small part either. And I think he had a really good career. I think his years in Buffalo were obviously his best. There's a lot about it that's really sad, though, and I think especially so young, 35, to pass away, that's just terrible news, and you can always hope that never happens. As for the CTE issue, as far as we know, police have said that Montador's death was natural causes, so we know it wasn't depression, or hopefully wasn't depression related. But I think that's the thing that we're really going to start seeing now. There's a new concussion lawsuit now, and who's to say there's not more to come? I just think athletes then didn't take the care of themselves that maybe they should have, and that onus doesn't fall on them. It falls on the structure as a whole, because leagues should be doing everything they can to protect their players, and obviously there was not enough research done into properly protecting those players, and I think that's concerning. And I think the CTE issue will probably become something that we hear a lot more about in the next 5 years.
I think the CTE issue is something we'll still hear about, but I don't think it's just a hockey thing. I think it's all collision sports as well. They'll hear a lot about it. And then lastly here, Jared, Connor McDavid, he played on Monday in Mississauga against the Steelheads. I mean, he was mobbed. It took him 35 minutes to get back on the team bus. We know he's the real deal. We've seen his production for the Erie Otters in the OHL and what he did in the World Juniors. How do you think he's handled the media hype of potentially being, a first overall pick? And are some teams, I think Buffalo kind of made that Winnipeg move to potentially have Evander Kane and Connor McDavid play. Are teams sometimes kind of overzealous at potentially being the first overall pick to make moves for the future for guys that they don't even have yet?
Yeah. I think that's kind of in the same vein of the mystery box thing we talked about. You're not getting a known entity, and anything can happen. Alexander Degg is the one who always comes to mind, right?
Yep.
But I think as far as handling the pressure, McDavid's done a more than admirable job. There's a ton of times he could have probably lashed out a little bit when everyone was all over him for that fight he got in. But he took it in stride. He rehabbed, and he obviously rehabbed really hard, and he got back in time for the World Junior. And I mean, he produced, and he's been producing ever since he's been back. And you don't hear much about him aside from this kid is an amazing hockey player. And I think that's the best thing you can hope for a prospect. As far as teams tanking for him, it's a scary proposition. And I agree with you that Buffalo did make that move in order to kind of tip the scales in their favor when it comes to ending up at the bottom of the league table by the end of the year, especially considering they traded for a player who will not be able to play for the rest of the season. But overall, I think we can be pretty certain in this day and age that McDavid will be, if not an elite player, he will be an everyday NHL player, and I think that's about all you can really hope for at the draft.
Well, Jared, I'd like to thank you for coming on, and I'll give you the last couple seconds here to tell people where they can come find you and check out your work.
Yeah, you can find me at the Hockey News. I'm the web editor there, or web writer there, so you can find me there Monday through Friday and on pretty much every second weekend. You can also follow me on Twitter at THN Jared Clinton. That's THN. Jared is spelled Jared, and Clinton, like the president, Clinton. Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It was a real pleasure to have you on, Jared. Hope to get you on again soon. That's going to do it for today, everyone. Peace out.